The 6 to 7 Figure Show, episode 87. Let's hit it.
Broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun outside Phoenix, Arizona. This is the 6 to 7 Figure Show. Tired of working so hard and having no time? Take your six-figure practice and turn it to a thriving seven-figure enterprise. And now, your host, author, speaker, mentor, and strategist, Frank Bria.
Hey everyone, welcome to the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I'm your host, Frank Bria, and in today's episode, we are going to focus on entrepreneurship. But first, a quick message from our sponsor. This episode of the 6 to 7 Figure Show is brought to you by High Ticket Program. Did you know that you're only 12 projects away from turning your six-figure enterprise into a thriving seven-figure concern? In the High Ticket Program Accelerator, we guide you through every step of growth and scale in a process we call LEAP. Imagine having a world-class project team guiding you and your team through every step of pain-free growth, all with the goal of becoming a seven-figure enterprise and moving away from painful, time-consuming business operations and client delivery. Get a taste of LEAP in your own business by downloading the High Ticket Program Core Offer Black Book. It contains more than 60 pages of standard operating procedures for your business, including onboarding, customer service, graduation, financial management, and a lot more. You can get that for free by going to the show's homepage at 6to7.show. That's 6to7.show for your free Black Book. I am absolutely pleased to be introducing today's guest, Alan M. Shafer, who is an entrepreneurial mentor, coach, speaker, infrastructure opportunity creator, business risk mitigator, board of directors member, the business doctor. And we're going to get into that because that sounds fun. Followed a successful corporate career with IBM. And is now successfully helping launch a variety of startup businesses. Alan, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. Frank.
So first of all, I got to share that we share a little bit of a good common background. So I wasn't an employee of IBM, but they were a client of mine for a number of years and learned a lot of good stuff from them. They're a great learning laboratory for entrepreneurship.
Well, actually, that's right, and that's where I learned without knowing it. That's where I learned entrepreneurship. I had the opportunities inside of IBM to be able to help them set up some businesses. And that was something a little unusual.
And a lot of people don't know that about IBM, that there's actually all these little entrepreneurial things going on inside of the corporation. Everyone thinks maybe IBM is just the big box company, but there's some really cool stuff going on in there.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. And I was able to live through about 3 or 4 of their emergence into new markets, which was very helpful to me.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, there's a ton of learning when you see, a large organization do startup, to see them, how they actually approach it. There's a lot of things that, you get a perspective. I don't think a lot of entrepreneurs can see because they've never really been inside it. And I had one advantage
because I started off as a technologist, a systems engineer, systems analyst, code for companies when companies were first getting their computers into a business. Okay. And what I had to do was analyze what that business needed to put onto a computer. I got trained by some of the best entrepreneurs in the world putting computers into their business for the first time.
Yeah,
that was excellent.
That is a great place to learn. I mean, when I started in technology, I did a lot of business system stuff as well, and early on, and man, it's like diving into the deep end of the pool. Sometimes you walk into a new client and you have to analyze what all the operations and processes are and then get them on a piece of paper. Man, you really have to, if you have to tell a coder what to do or a network technologist what to plug in, you better know your stuff.
Oh yeah, and those same skills are what you use to build an infrastructure for a startup company. It's the exact same skills. So I got taught by some of the best teachers in the world.
Yeah, that's terrific. So let's talk a little bit about the work you do now. Which kinds of entrepreneurs are you typically working with, and what kinds of businesses are they starting?
We actually cover 2 types of businesses. Those that are pure startup, where either they've got just an idea, or they've taken it as far as they can before they launch. Okay. And we work with them to build an infrastructure, check to see what their financial plans are, help them do some funding if they need it, and get their products launched. Then there are other companies that have been around for a couple of years, maybe been in revenue 6 figures, maybe wanting to get to 7. And we help them expand their scope to help them break through whatever glass ceiling or plateau they reached before. And that gives us some satisfaction. Honestly, I probably get more good feelings taking somebody who's really just got an idea and getting them to actually start getting revenue. It's kind of like with my kids, getting them to take the training wheels off their bicycles.
Yeah.
Get the same kind of feeling. So that's very rewarding.
Yeah. There is something, if anyone has ever done the product startup thing before, knows what you're talking about. Yeah. It's that you do a lot of work and a lot of planning, and it's almost like this imaginary dream thing, and then suddenly someone pays for it for the first time. And
the biggest issue we run into is that somebody says, "Oh, I have this great idea. I can build this thing for $10. I'll sell it for $20 and make $10 more." Doesn't realize it needs to be 4 or 5 times what your cost is to be able to be successful in the market. They don't know that. One of my partners used to own a chain of 230 drugstores out in the Midwest, Bigly Drugs. He's my financial partner now. He knows all the things that have failed that we've pivoted from, and you can't teach somebody something really gut level if you haven't failed at it at some point in time. So that's the way the world works, and we can help people avoid some of those failures. Not all of them.
Yeah, that is a really good point. I mean,
help every one of my clients. I guarantee you 3 things. I guarantee it's going to take longer than you thought it was going to be. I guarantee it's going to cost more than you thought it was. And I guarantee the first one won't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my guarantee.
In fact, it's funny you say that, because one of the things that we tell our clients very first thing when they start designing service programs is, don't worry, it's going to be wrong. Right. Whatever you do, it's going to be wrong. So don't worry about it. This concept of failure, though.
The other big question we ask is, are you building this for an exit strategy, or are you building it as a legacy? And you take those things, and it helps us determine what path do we want to take them down. I'm sorry, I cut you off. I didn't mean to.
No, it's great, because that you're focusing on essentially business model, and all of these elements come into play into the business model. And this is something that I don't think a lot of entrepreneurs think of up front. They don't do enough time thinking about the business model. How am I going to get paid? How is it going to exit? Where are we going to end in all of this? It's interesting. There was an article in the New York Times a couple of months ago that was talking about the number one reason for small business failures. And it's funny, because those of us who've been in the industry for a while, we always think, oh, it's lack of capital, right? It's lack of cash flow. And they tried to dig into this a little bit more deeply to figure out exactly what that means. And it's interesting that they came up with the number one reason is that the numbers never would have penciled out. In other words, they didn't even have a business model that ever would have worked to begin with, because no one thought through all of these things about profitability and revenue and where you're going to get your customers from and what are they going to pay at the beginning.
Well, that's because a lot of people try to do it where they think, oh, I know exactly what I want. I know everything. And therefore, I'm just going to move forward and I don't need any advice.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, when I was with IBM, if I didn't have the mentors that I had, I would have not done as successful as I was finally able to do. And if there are, thank goodness today, there are places where you can get some entrepreneurial advice. Some of the university, I'm in Central Florida. We have the University of Central Florida is here, and it has an incubator program. I'm one of the mentors of it. They actually bring people in and teach them classes to do that, of which I get to teach. And then there's a lot of competitive business presentations that we work with. And it's gotten better than it used to be, but people still make mistakes.
Yeah, sure.
Keeps me in business.
This is something which I think is great about, I guess, the internet age or information age we've been in, is that there's a lot more information available to folks who are trying to start a business than was the case before. And the infrastructure has made it, in some sense, a lot easier. Some of the capital needs that were, I mean, I did some tech startups years ago where, we couldn't even get out of bed unless we had $6 million in the bank to start the thing. And that's just not the case anymore with a lot of startups. They can get started for a lot less. And I just think that's great. It sort of equalizes the opportunity across the board.
That's interesting, because when you talk about investors, there are several types of investors. There's your angel investor who's going to put up maybe a couple of $100,000, and you got a soft venture who's going to put up maybe a couple million. Then you got the hard venture guys that are going to put up more.
Yeah.
We've tried to focus in the angel and soft investor area because we can tell a story. Let me tell you, it has nothing to do with the product anymore. It has nothing to do with your financial plan. It has to do with who's on your team, who's going to run your business, what experience do they have, and kind of return on investment can you get out of it, and what stories can you tell about your product and your market. If you can't tell a story, you're doomed.
That is a really, really good set of advice for anyone who's looking to raise money. I think for a lot of people, when they look at approaching investors, this is a bit of a mystery space for them. They don't know what they're getting into. I mean, most of us still just have those pictures in our head of like walking into a bank with a bound business plan and slapping it down over the coffee table there and hoping that some banker would pick it up and run with it. It's just not like that anymore. What are some of the mistakes that you see people make when they are looking to raise funds? What are some of the big ones?
Well, one of the biggest mistakes I found is that people have tried to do it themselves, spend all of their money putting it into their business, and they go to a bank or an investor, and the investor says, well, how much do you have to put in? Well, I put in 120,000 already. Yeah, but how much do you have now? They should have come looking for the money when they still had some, because it still takes money to get money, no matter who you're talking to. That's probably the biggest mistake. The other one is not being able to tell a story. And the third one is kind of what I said before. If they think they know all the answers and don't have somebody on their team who can provide them proper advice and counsel, they're swimming upstream.
Yeah, this is a big one. People who have never really raised money before probably don't appreciate this as much, but your investors are going to want to see that you've got some experience and skill set on your team.
Yes.
If you've never done this before, if you're moving from a full-time job into entrepreneurship and you don't have any advisors or assistants on your either leadership team or board of advisors, it's going to be very difficult for you to convince somebody to part with their funds.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah, that is absolutely great advice. I want to turn a little bit to the work that you do with your clients. Let's take the startup example. So folks come to you with an idea and a dream and basically say, all right, Alan, help us get this thing launched. Are there some steps or processes that you typically take people through that help them get to that first revenue threshold?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We have a process that we take all of our clients through, potential clients and so on. It's first, when I was, and I hate to keep going back, but when I was with IBM, I learned this technique of doing what I call a workshop, strategic planning session, that you can elicit what is it that they really want to get out of their business. It takes anywhere from a half a day to a day and a half, and we're trying to pick the brains of what it is that they were trying to get to. What we then do is we'll go do market research into the market they're trying to get into to see whether they have a viable product. Sometimes our first contracts are to do a feasibility study to say whether this is real or not. Yeah. Other times, if we know that it's real, we'll say, okay, let's put together a financial plan. Does the financial plan see that you can afford to build it, afford to sell it, afford to distribute it, afford to ship it? You lay out all that. We have a copyrighted financial planning projection model that we use for our people. It kind of plugs in all the costs that you would normally have in any business and try to take care of what's their cost of goods, what's their first profit, what's their net profit, and so on. We take them all through that because it's not just I can build it for $10 and sell it for 20 and become a millionaire.
Yeah, yeah.
And the last thing, what I used to do, we used to write 40-page business plans, text and pictures and things like that, and they were works of art. Nobody reads them anymore. So we don't do that. We have a template for a 12 to 14-page PowerPoint presentation. It allows us to tell the story with a few words, a bunch of pictures, and you're not reading a poem, you're actually hearing a story, and that seems to resonate very well, not only with the people that we're looking for investing money, but also for the people that we know need to hire. When we go through a project, we work on a small, because these guys don't have a whole lot of money, we work on a small retainer. We usually work on a piece of their business, sometimes a share of the profits, depending on what the product is and so on. And one of the things that we do, and sometimes we end up taking an ownership position with the company. To do that, we normally require that either my partner or I, sometimes both, be on their board of directors.
Sure.
Because the boards are going to be the ones that are going to really manage the execution of that plan. If we create a financial model and nobody meets the numbers on it, somebody's going to have to pay. Right. I'd rather be on the criticizing part, because if I was on the creating part, I want to be able to at least criticize myself. Yeah. I won't feel so bad.
No, that's great. You're describing a kind of what we used to call pitch deck in sort of the VC world, but it's useful for a lot of people. Think, well, I'm not going to venture capitalist, so I don't need something like that. But the storyline that you're designing is great for strategic partnerships, vendor relationships, critical hires in the management team. These are really great. It's great to have.
Oh, that's absolutely correct. It doesn't matter how we've used it to go to the SBA for loans. We use it to go to investors. We use it to go create partnerships. We create joint ventures sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's the same. If you can do it right, it's the same story. I had the opportunity. I had started a company in New Jersey several years ago, and I got involved with a couple of investment organizations, and they told me what the investment deck needed to look like. He said, if you go in this sequence and address these factors, you'll be able to have a really good plan. So now we utilize that, and it kind of gives the who, what, why, where, when, and how in a sequence that investors are looking for.
Yeah, what great advice to have been given the essentially the answer sheet to the test.
Exactly. It's working great for us.
That's great. The other thing that I love that you're doing is building the financial plan. I know a lot of people get really nervous about numbers and money and projections, and they feel like it's sort of beyond them, which again is another good reason why you've suggested getting help. Someone who's actually looked at this and been through this before. But it's interesting, as I've built financial plans for clients before who have never really been in a spreadsheet or have ever seen a financial plan before, it's interesting to see the reaction when they can visualize essentially their business operations and functions working in a financial plan. I remember one client telling me one time, I've never actually understood how my business works before until I've seen it, as the numbers laid out here. So that is so critical. And again, it goes back to that article that I mentioned earlier about if the numbers don't pencil out, don't bother. I mean, it's like knowing that your business is going to be successful or fail before you even get out the door with it. If you've got a model that's not going to work.
One of the things that we must do is we'll create projections of what the sales will be and what the growth will be month by month and so on.
Yeah.
One of the things we'll look at is we'll do some market research and try to prove that the numbers we're projecting fall within reason to what the market is. So I like to be able to show that if we're going to project to sell 500,000 of these things over 5 years, that we can identify from statistical sources that the market is at least twice as big. So that we're only going to be, and that's at a usually a 1, 2, or 3% penetration rate.
Yeah.
If you can make those numbers gel, you know you've got some kind of validation.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm a fan of validation. Anything you can do to put the numbers and the statistics in there is terrific. That is absolutely great advice. And one of the things I want to highlight as we're kind of wrapping it up here, running out of time, but I want to highlight that you said that I agree with 100% is go get some help to do this. It is so critical that every entrepreneur, I mean, I don't care how large the business is, businesses bring in experts. Like even IBM, you would think IBM knows everything. They got all the smart people in. They bring in folks, to help get outside expertise on stuff where they need some help. One of the reasons why I was fortunate that they were one of my clients, they brought me in a couple of times to help them with some projects. So, but every big smart company I know brings in outside help to get stuff done. If they don't have the internal knowledge, they don't try to do it themselves or learn it on their own or go through it the hard way. They try to leverage the learnings of other people. Yep. So I think it's a great lesson.
And that's one of the secrets to what I've been successful with, because I've been drawing people, either people that I've met recently, sometimes it's people from the past. Besides my partner Bob Begley, who's the financial guy, I got a marketing guy who's been published in Inc. magazine and Maxwell's books rented by name.
Yeah.
And we try to get as many good people. I've got the best social media brand reputation guy in Central Florida here. He may be the best in the country, but he'll say that, but I won't. I'm not supposed to say that. So we try to put a team together because we know you can't do it all your own. I give that same advice to an entrepreneur. Don't try to do it all yourself. Get the people that you can bring into your team to give you the advice and give you the advantage of their failure.
Yeah. Yeah. Just really bring the A team. That's great. Great advice. Alan, unfortunately, we're out of time. I'd love to continue the conversation with you. I'm sure you've got lots of great other stories you could tell us. But I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule for the interview. One last question for you before we go. As folks are listening to you and want to tap into your expertise, what's a great way for them to connect with you?
Well, I'll tell you the best way is probably using LinkedIn. I am Alan Shafer, ALANSHAFER. That's what I'm on LinkedIn. Send me a note and I'll be happy to respond to you. We also have a website. It's Alliant Marketing Solutions, but probably LinkedIn is a better way to go. Just come in by name and we can start a dialogue.
Great. Excellent. And that link directly to Alan's profile is here below the video. It's on the show notes page. If you're on the audio version, if you're out and about listening to this, come on back to the show notes page. You can click on through and connect with Alan. Alan, thanks so much for being with us on this episode. We really appreciate it.
Frank, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thanks for being with us on this episode of the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I've been your host, Frank Bria. Just a quick reminder about the free high ticket program Core Offer Black Book that contains more than 60 pages of standard operating procedures on how to run your coaching, consulting, or expert-based service business. You can download that for free at the show's homepage, 6to7.show. That is 6to7.show for your free Black Book. We will see you on the next episode of the 6 to 7 Figure Show. Make it happen. Bye-bye.